urgent catastrophe everywhere. The Russian Federation is sliding into an energy crisis. Russians are filming videos at gas stations and getting ready to switch to horse-drawn carts. The railway is fading into oblivion. Putin will have to give up trains. It has finally happened. Electric cars are now banned in Crimea. The peak of madness has arrived. Permission to cross the Crimean Bridge is strictly granted only after filling out a questionnaire. Mobile internet has become a luxury for Russians. Radios instead of phones. In the video, the SVO heroes started a sad song. They're coming after Putin as the dictator goes all in. Full mobilization. At this moment, Gerasimov tripped him up. No one expected this. Has the Russian leadership fallen apart? Find out more about this. Watch until the end. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Darina Hotsakalo, and here are the latest events. Everything is stable in Russia. The catastrophe feels right at home, and the fuel crisis continues. Russians keep complaining 95 octane has disappeared, just like their greatness. Now they're pouring whatever's left 92 octane into their tanks in anger. Instead of fuel, Russians have only shame in their tanks.
All I've got is 10 liters for now. I've got half a tank left.
I just counted as not much.
So I'll go ahead and add some 92. Honestly, I barely even had enough time to say just 2 words, and before I knew it, it was already completely gone.
However, it seems they won't have much time to be happy about even this. Supplies are running on empty, and there are too many people eager to grab the last drops of luxury.
I'm filling up at the gas station, and they tell me, you're lucky, you're the last one to get any 92 octane gasoline. And then there are the prices, about 58 rubles per liter, while others just turn around and say, there's no point in waiting. There's no more gasoline left.
And then another problem arises. For the first time in 5 years, Russian railways has become unprofitable. There's no point in hiding it. From January to September 2025, Russian railways suffered losses amounting to 4.4 billion rubles. During the same period last year, the company made a profit of 44 billion. The main reasons for such a decline are the high key interest rate and sanctions pressure. The Kremlin's railway monopoly is also being brought to its knees by underground resistance fighters. The Freedom of Russia resistance movement has burned dozens of locomotives, and that's just recently. Epic videos you can't take your eyes off. You have to see this. The lightning-fast strikes on locomotives, to which Putin has already written farewell letters, continue. A hot season lies ahead. The partisans' incendiary cocktails have destroyed the control and power supply systems of dozens of machines that were transporting military cargo. And on top of that, a sensation. Electric and hybrid cars are now banned from crossing the Crimean Bridge. It seems the auto revolution has passed the occupiers by. Now strict checks for everyone. The reason is an attempt to transport explosives in the traction batteries of cars. Before entering the crossing, drivers are required to fill out a special form. You have to indicate what kind of car you're driving, hybrid, electric, diesel, or gasoline. If you choose the first 2 options, they turn you back. And until recently, it was dangerous to drive a gasoline car on the peninsula. The Russians, who found themselves essentially backed into a corner, decided to resort to tricks. At checkpoints, they are massively draining fuel from locals. This practice started this week and is gaining momentum every day. At the same time, the occupiers don't bother people with Russian registration because they have a long way to travel home. But for Ukrainians, their gasoline is drained constantly. Right now, Tyumen is on the line. There's no sign of civilization there either. Russians are whining. Life without mobile internet has begun. Payment terminals are becoming a thing of the past. It's time to remember cash.
We're in isolation. I just leave the house and my phone turns into a brick because nothing works at all. I go to a gas station and I have to carry a card with me because my mobile internet doesn't work. Just now, I went into a cafe and I couldn't pay because their terminal wasn't working, since the mobile internet is down. Their Wi-Fi connection isn't working either, just like ours, and at the same time, it's not really about the internet connection itself or the technical issues specifically, but rather
not about the frontline regions, but about deep Siberia, which would seem to be safe Russia. But even there, a full-scale rollback to the last century is underway. Development in Russia seems to have come to a halt, and likely for a long time. And strangely enough, Russians are not at all thrilled about such a future. Now,
I was just at the mall, and even there I couldn't pay for anything because people, small businesses, their card terminals aren't working. Because there's no internet. And so who suffers as a result? Not even the consumers, but small businesses. Because I can get by without these things. Basically, I couldn't do it, but...
Now comes the real sensation. While Siberia still can't recover from such chaos, Krasnodar Krai has already figured it out. There will be no going back. We'll have to live differently now. Phones are being set aside. Now good old walkie-talkies are back in use.
I'm saying find me some Yubilinoy cookies, please, Keldor. I'm looking. Oh no, that's something else. Get some Yubilinoy, get some...
The harsh realities of life in the Russian Federation without embellishment.
Why the highways? I can't show the video.
The so-called special military operation continues in losses. There aren't any. However, memorials to the fallen are springing up like mushrooms all over the territory of the Russian Federation. And the Russian soldiers themselves are whining that entire companies are dying like flies.
We were sent on June 15th on a combat mission as part of the assault group of the 242nd Group. I was left alone, no one survived, I don't know with whom. I repeatedly tried to contact my group. I wrote to the 242nd, told them where I was.
However, Putin doesn't care about this and keeps pressing the button. Starting in 2026, Russians will be conscripted into the army year-round, and those who do not receive the so-called letters of happiness will have to go to the military enlistment office themselves. Moreover, Russian reservists can now be involved in guarding critical facilities, including oil refineries. Russians themselves are not very pleased with this prospect. Don't miss all the details about this coming up next.
The cannon fodder conveyor. Putin has signed a law on year-round conscription into the Russian army.
We feel confident, stable, and despite certain losses, which of course will be associated with many inspections, we remain steadfast.
The new law allows military enlistment officers to operate without breaks, and dodging service will become even harder.
Well done. He will be with us. Definitely. He will be with us.
But this optimistic mood will soon leave these heroes.
Never go to the special military operation. You will get caught.
How many people we've lost is just...
And will lose even more because Putin is doing everything to make that happen. According to the new procedure, recruitment into the army will take place throughout the entire year from January 1st to December 31st, and not just during the spring and autumn drafts.
All of this is clear evidence that the Russian Federation acknowledges the catastrophic and devastating nature of its personnel losses and the failure to achieve the tactical objectives of the so-called special military operation.
According to the new rules, draft notices can now be posted in the state electronic registry. And the deadline to report to the military enlistment office must not exceed 30 days from the date of publication.
This refers to the notice, which is a formal written document or announcement intended to inform individuals or groups about important matters, updates, or required actions. Notices are typically used to communicate essential information that recipients need to be aware of, and it is important to read and understand the contents of the notice carefully to ensure that all instructions or requirements are followed appropriately. The so-called First Free Partial Mobilization in the territory of the Russian Federation, according to the Russian side's own estimates, caused more than 1.5 million citizens of that country to leave.
At the same time, Putin signed another law that allows reservists to be involved in guarding critically important infrastructure facilities. Russian media note that this is about strengthening control over military and energy.
If you are ever faced with a situation where you need to make an important choice, it is wise to take a moment to think carefully about all the possible options and outcomes before you decide what to do.
In simple terms, Putin's new rules effectively legalize year-round raids and constant pressure on conscripts. And while the Kremlin dictator makes decisions from his warm office and tells stories about how Russians are voluntarily lining up to go to war
Our guys go voluntarily, they go on their own. And here, 50 to 60,000 guys a month come on their own.
At the front, Russian soldiers curse the day. After all, some were lured by money but ended up with nothing. Others were simply deceived and thrown in as cannon fodder.
My head got straightened out pretty quickly. It took me literally 3 or 4 months to understand the real situation. I'd honestly rather get caught and have to go to jail than ever go there to that place.
The beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the aggressor country Russia lost about 1.5 million soldiers. Since the beginning
of 2025, 336,000 citizens of the Russian Federation have signed contracts with the armed forces of the Russian Federation. And now, attention to the assessments of British intelligence. The needs of the Russian occupiers from January to November remained at 353,000 military personnel.
In other words, the losses of the Russian army are much greater than the ability to replenish its personnel. That is, the issue of replenishing personnel is being addressed at the expense of volunteers. Even with financial incentives, and most of the volunteers are residents of Russia's depressed regions, this does not solve the problem of replenishing personnel. No matter how many soldiers the Kremlin sends to Ukraine, only defeat and death await them here. And the Russian ruler understands this perfectly well. But he doesn't care.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Something incredible is happening inside Russia. The system is being broken from within. General Gerasimov has found himself caught in his own web of intrigues. Now he is hastily purging the ranks and removing generals to cover up his own mistakes. His deception regarding the events in Pokrovsk has backfired. Fury is boiling over in the Kremlin, Putin is enraged, and the military leadership is collapsing like a house of cards. Gerasimov is in a panic, looking for someone to blame for the failures and his own lies to Putin about how they supposedly defeated everyone, captured and surrounded everything. According to blogger and journalist Zolkin, heads have already started to roll. At the very least, the chief of the Russian General Staff has already dismissed 2 generals. Whether Gerasimov himself will be removed is still unknown. In a sense, this liar even works to our advantage. Sensational news from the Kremlin. Gerasimov's opposition has wavered. He is literally standing on the edge of an abyss. In Moscow, they are already preparing a new savior for the army. Putin is in a state of hysteria. He changes his decisions every hour, not knowing whom to trust anymore. The military leadership is crumbling like ashes. In the offices, there are mutual denunciations and panic. The atmosphere is so explosive that it seems soon there will be no one left to give orders. Everything that has been hidden until now, watch it right now. The last leg of Valery Gerasimov's chair has broken. The movement Atezh, citing information from officers of one of the Russian military groups, reports that the Kremlin is very dissatisfied with the general's work and, to put it mildly, his untruthful reports from the front.
Putin gave Gerasimov a deadline to capture Pokrovsk by mid-November. This order is the general's last chance to keep his position. Against the backdrop of this ultimatum, there has been a sharp increase in meat grinder tactics on the Pokrovsk front. The command is throwing large waves of personnel into suicidal attacks in order to fulfill the order at any cost. The unremarkable and charisma-lacking Valery Gerasimov is the man to whom Putin owes his first presidential term. It was he who, while Moscow was preparing to check boxes on ballots, commanded the combat operations for the village of Komsomolskoye. This battle, which lasted 15 days, became the key and final one in the Russians' second Chechen campaign. Gerasimov delivered victory to candidate Putin, marching over the countless corpses of Russian army soldiers and local residents.
The residents were allowed to leave the village, but they weren't allowed to go far. They were forced to stay for several days outside the outskirts of the village, but in fact they served as a human shield. In
2012, it was Gerasimov who presented the hybrid warfare formula to the Ukrainian leadership. At that time, he insisted that it was necessary to move away from classical wars towards destabilization on the ground.
According to Putin, this involves actively using the protest potential of the fifth column.
A little later, the Russians tested Gerasimov's formula first in Crimea and then in Donbass. According to Bellingcat investigators, in 2014, Valery Gerasimov was the initiator of sending regular Russian troops to Ukrainian Ilovaisk and transferring Russian military equipment to the separatists, from which, among other things, the Malaysian Boeing was shot down. Mute Gerasim, as this grey cardinal of the general staff is called among themselves, has outlasted all his bright and loud critics.
Those who refuse to provide us with ammunition will be eating it in hell, tate, vinaik, up their asses. We have a 70% shortage of ammunition. Shoigu, Gerasimov, General, can you please tell me where is the ammunition?
Prigozhin was blown up. Strelkov Gherkin is rotting behind bars. After the scandal, it was thanks to Valery Gerasimov's efforts that even the favorite was sent there. Of Russian Z patriots, General Popov. Even Shoigu was carried out of the Ministry of Defense. But Mute Gerasim is still sitting in his chair. Although rumors about his dismissal have been actively circulating since last summer, and now it seems they really do have some basis. If Gerasim is replaced, especially if the capture of Pokrovsk fails by mid-November, a certain Viktor Viktorovich Poznikir will take his place. He was born and raised near the Ukrainian city of Sumy. Not much is known about him. He was secretly awarded the Order of Zhukov, which is a distinguished Russian military decoration given for exceptional leadership and service. In February 2024, he was promoted to the rank of Colonel General, a senior position in the Russian military that reflects a high level of trust and responsibility. He played an important role in the operations in Palmyra and Aleppo, two key cities in Syria that have experienced significant conflict and military activity. Poznikir also discussed the responsibilities and achievements of the Russian military police in the Middle East, emphasizing their efforts to maintain order and support local authorities in a region facing ongoing instability. Additionally, he criticized the presence of American military forces in the region, expressing concerns that their continued involvement has contributed to further tensions and instability rather than promoting peace. The statement by the Lieutenant General about U.S. plans to develop a global missile defense system caused even more of a stir. At the Moscow Conference on International Security, Poznikir called Washington a likely adversary of Moscow. To overcome missile defense, Viktor Viktorovich proposed using the Sarmat and Avangard systems. It is still unknown whether Gerasimov will be able to outsmart his adversaries again and hold on. Since the summer, the occupiers have been amassing troops in the Pokrovsk direction and probing for weak spots in the Ukrainian defenses. On their side are Russia's vast resources, which they spare no expense to achieve their goals, and a large number of fortune seekers who have been lured by contracts and the prospect of a new hero status. And in 2025, Pokrovsk could become an important and decisive battle, much like the Chechen village of Komsomolskoye once was.
And finally, Russian propaganda has reached a new level of madness. Shocking. The Kremlin has come up with a new absurdity. Now it's women who are to blame. Supposedly, they are the ones destroying Russia and bringing all its misfortunes. Moscow's mouthpieces have completely lost their minds, searching for enemies among their own citizens. And it seems this is just the tip of the iceberg. Don't miss the stunning details about all the inner workings of Russia coming up next.
Last week in Russia once again proved that there is no such thing as rock bottom. From church advice to hide infidelity and give birth after violence, to deputies' confessions and propagandists' fantasies. It seems Ukraine has developed its own form of madness.
I don't know, of course, what you're sniffing over there, but at least take a break already. Your lies are so ridiculous and vulgar that...
Just imagine in Russia they've come up with a new way to strengthen the institution of the family by keeping silent.
A person should act with careful consideration here, because being honest doesn't mean you have to announce to everyone at every corner what happened to you.
Metropolitan Rostislav suggested not admitting to marital infidelity, but simply repenting for it during confession. According to the clergyman, this way you can preserve your marriage without destroying it with the truth.
It is much more important to cleanse your conscience in the sacrament of repentance and come to confession to repent of this sin.
And in the Russian Orthodox Church, women were once again reminded of their place beside their husbands, preferably not straying too far. Priest Andriy Strutsky stated that a woman without a man is like a letter being carried back and forth. After all, according to him, she needs support and guidance so as not to lose her way.
In other words, without a man, a woman is carried around like a leaflet.
Meanwhile, deputies in the Sverdlovsk region continue to surprise with new ideas about the female body. This time, the People's Deputy Vyacheslav Wegner proposed not to allow abortions even after rape, but instead to give birth to the child and hand it over to
If it was conceived, then it is God's will.
And in Ryazan, once again, even sermons about morality. Bishop Petirim reported that after abortion restrictions, the official statistics
And
as usual, of course, it's the women who are to blame. And the clergyman did not mince words, calling them serial killers and blaming them for all the country's troubles.
And this doctor who performs the abortion, this is a person who is not just up to his elbows in blood. He is covered in blood. He is soaked in blood up to the very top of his head, this practitioner, and these women are serial killers.
In addition, Solovyov reported that allegedly captured Ukrainian soldiers say they are not fighting for their own country, but because the authorities have taken their families hostage. The story is, to put it mildly, astonishing.
And when they are taken prisoner and spoken to, they say, "How can we surrender? They have taken our families hostage." These are men, moreover, from Russian-speaking regions of Ukraine. They say, "Well, God forbid something happens and they find out we surrendered on our own. They'll do terrible things. That's why we can't do it."
How do you assess the scale of the catastrophe that Russia has found itself in? Share your opinion in the comments, hit the like button under the video, and stay up to date with the main news. There are almost 480,000 of us subscribed now, and there will be more to come. See you soon.